Welcome back to Overhaul Overland. In the first episode, we went through the process of finding a vehicle. Now we've sourced one that we actually want to consider buying. But before we go and buy it, we need to get it checked out. And this is where I choose a specialist, someone who I know and I trust who can help me check the vehicle over. I use Snyman 4x4 for my checks, and if you don't have a Snyman, you can take it to the main franchise dealer, or you could take it to a Goch car service center. They're going to go through the vehicle and make sure that they check critical items. You don't want to find a vehicle that you're buying full of rust. You want to make sure that the engine is in good running order, the gearbox has not got a big problem on it, and that you can be confident that buying this vehicle is not going to cost you a lot of money where you could have bought a better vehicle. So what we're going to do here is we're going to basically go through this, take the wheels off, working from the front to the back, and then start identifying what are the problems on this car where we're going to spend money, and we're going to prioritize those so we can understand how we spend our money. In this project, we're doing a lot of work on this vehicle.
Yeah.
But for me, it's really what would be the key things before we start stripping that we need to check?
When I take this car, I look for play on steering rack ends, tie rod ends, upper lower ball joints. We usually look at the condition of the radiator core and to see if there's soft points or not. Play on gearbox output shafts, play on prop shaft slides. Also, we'll look at corrosion on your sump, because I see on your one it's got a lot of corrosion on.
Yeah, it has.
And you can't see the thickness of the plate, so just one day you'll see your engine oil is running out. Also take the compression test.
Yeah, let's do that.
We'll start out, and then you have the first idea of where your main money spent will be. If the engine is not 100%, then you know there's your core money you're going to spend.
Yeah. And then you make a decision on how you go from there.
Yeah. So there's two ways of doing the compression, through your glow plug hole or through the injector hole. But it's labor-wise, it's quick and easy to do it through the glow plug. As I took out the glow plugs, I used to check if there's any burn marks and if they're full of oil. If they're full of oil, you basically already know your answer before you've done the compression test. But on this one, all four is dry. So yeah, we're going to do a compression test now. So Paul, if you won't mind. 35 bar.
35 good.
Yeah, that's actually quite good. Okay.
Eight.
27 bar. Okay. $50 bar. $25. My personal thought is this engine got some heat at some stage, so some of the rings basically lost tension. So yeah, but yeah, you'll definitely see it when we open the engine. But yeah, the compression is not what it should be.
So you spoke earlier about the sump, and as we can see, this is very corroded. I wouldn't want to guess how thick what's left of the steel, but let's not risk it. We're definitely going to change it.
Yeah.
And just looking further up here, you know, there are hoses, and obviously there's still some more mountings that are holding the whole subframe here.
Yes.
These rubber mountings here, which also have been subjected to oil.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll be changing all these as well.
Definitely.
And on the front differential here?
Oh, there's another mounting here for it.
Yeah.
You can see it's hanging a bit, so this one is a bit
Also,
worn out.
yeah.
And then at the back is one.
Yeah.
But you can see that sponge I talked about much better. Yeah. Otherwise, if we look at the front diff, you can see where the CV joint goes in. You can see that play.
Okay. Yeah.
Some do have play, but if it gets too excessive, then you need to replace
actually that shaft in there, and you've got worn splines.
Yeah.
So just checking both sides, the same thing.
Yeah.
So this is when it becomes really important to find someone who actually has really in-depth experience. And I mean years and years of experience on a particular model or brand, because the little nuances of understanding how much play and what to look for is really important. And you know, I know that little bit of play, you'll know for some vehicles that little bit extra is a problem and a little bit is okay.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that and knowing what you can get away with and what absolutely needs to be fixed and sorted out.
Yeah.
Now looking at the cooling system here, critical on a cooling system, and of course this vehicle had inherent problems with overheating. Well, I say overheating, it was more a problem with the cylinder heads, which used to crack.
Yeah.
And of course any engine that's running a bit too hot, you're looking for all the ways to make sure the cooling system is properly efficient, and of course to remove heat away from the engine.
Yeah.
And I know the radiator is a compromise often overlooked.
Yeah, if it doesn't leak or if it isn't damaged, most people just say don't touch it.
Yeah.
But if it's such a sensitive part and the car's got 300,000 on, change it.
Yeah, absolutely, change it. And also you've got the air conditioning condenser that sits in front of the radiator. And I don't think people understand too often that the air's got to go through that air conditioning condenser. All those fins need to be in good condition.
Yeah.
Then it's going to go through the radiator. And if you've got anything in front of that, like spotlights or anything, it hampers all that airflow.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we've got the main cross member here, and then of course the gearbox and transfer box, and what we're looking at is oil leaks.
Yes.
Now traditionally, you know, oil leaks start between the engine and gearbox, rear main oil seal or an oil seal from the gearbox, and that oil gets, as you drive, blown back across and underneath. What sort of problems can you expect the oil to do to damage anything underneath here, besides make a mess on the chassis?
Yeah.
And it makes my chassis not rust anymore.
Yeah, it doesn't work well with rubber. And we do get it a lot, oil leaks, especially on your rack pushers, engine mounting, gearbox mounted. You see this one, gosh, your car was leaking so much. Actually started swollen.
So this is actually the oil sitting on this rubber has now actually damaged that rubber.
Yes.
And what we're seeing as the result is this side is more swollen than this side.
Yeah.
So actually shortening the life of a good rubber bush.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, if you take something like this and you put it in petrol or oil and stuff, it will start
to swell
like a sponge. And it basically it weakens it very, very bad.
And of course your steering rack's got a whole lot of bush mountings, and this is often a very weak point in a sense that these get compromised with oil.
Yeah. They're actually in the firing line of
most of the oil leaks.
Yes, so they suffer the most.
But again, I mean, you know, that's not overly expensive to replace bushes. No. It's more important to keep on top of it and safety critical items. So, I mean, we will definitely change this mounting here, and again on the steering rack, the mounts as well, just because of the amount of oil. Because we know this car's got a leaking power steering pump, and that's one of the oil leaks.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the gearbox and transfer box both have a set of breathers. Now that's another thing people overlook. Right on top, yeah.
And most people don't look for it. They push for the service must come in and out. 2 hours is booked. It must be gone. So it's most important to, if you want to do overland, let them take their time. Look at the car.
Yeah, there does need to be a lot more checks done, especially when you're taking a vehicle on a big expedition, or you're on the expedition and you want to have your vehicle serviced. You know, there's a list that I give to my clients to work through, and that's important. That a lot of them is just checking that a lot of little things are looked at so you can pick up that problem long before it becomes an issue.
Okay, let's have a look at the anti-sway bar here. It's got, we call it a half moon rubber. That's important to see if that got any play. Once again, you must take the load off to check this 100% because this whole thing is under tension. So as soon as this is off, then you can check that. Then we move to the little rubbers. That's the ones I said, it's such a small rubber, but it's not expensive. So you can change them. If you go down the link, you start looking at dust covers for the little ball joints. You'll see this one is broken. So all the sand, mud, water goes in here, and it actually becomes like grinding paste. So before you know it, this whole thing just pops out, and you have no anti-sway bar. So yeah, that's very important. If you start looking at your steering rack, it's very important to have quality rack end boot. The cheap ones at your normal spare shop is a very soft rubber, and if that gets a little bit of oil, it swells quite a lot, like a balloon almost. The one from Toyota is a very hard one, and yeah, it lasts very long. So rather go for a good quality one, because the other thing is if it tours on your trip and all the sand and mud goes in there, you can greet your steering rack goodbye. So yeah, that's very important. And then also if you move to the tie rod end, also check that this boot is 100%. Play is one thing, but if you don't have play and you get a torn tie rod boot, once again, it becomes like grinding paste inside. So always check that. Some tie rods you get with a grease nipple, some you don't. But yeah, if it does have a grease nipple, grease them every service.
So here we've got the brake caliper, and there are quite a number of problems that we come across when we find cars coming in. And I know, the pins stick, the pads stick inside. So the importance of taking this apart and the little rubber dust seals in there to check those. And I think that's often not checked on service. When you're taking the brakes and the calipers, and proper inspection of making sure that all this is working properly. And if you notice one pad is much thinner than the other, it's going to tell you that there's a problem. And the problem more often than not is that it's actually jammed. One pad's jammed and the other one's doing all the work. And it's important to look for those little telltale signs. So stripping is probably as important as putting back together, because it's highlighting problems. And I've always said, when you're going to fix anything on a vehicle, you need to understand the problems before you can actually fix it again. So we've got really good indication here to look at this. And again, tell us a bit more of the CV boots here.
Also important to have a good quality one on.
Yeah.
If it's too soft, it will just tear. These ones are actually, it feels like original ones. But yeah, it's very important to have quality on. Also, if you look at the upper and lower ball joint, it's important to look if those rubbers are still fine.
Yeah.
Because this is actually direct in the gravel.
Well, I have a story where I drove one of these vehicles across America with a very good friend of mine. And we came down a serious mountain pass. And we just stopped at the bottom of this pass in a car park. And as I rolled forward, the whole front of the one side felt like it had dropped in a hole. And I got out and I looked and I couldn't believe the whole bottom ball joint had come out. Now, had that happened down the mountain pass, I actually wouldn't be standing here today. And that car was prepared in England, and they didn't check that properly. Or if they did check it, or maybe it was overlooked, but it certainly didn't wear in the time we did the expedition. Now that's critical. I mean, that coming apart, this whole wheel, the drive shaft pulls out, you actually have no control of your car. That's how critical it is. It can be a life-threatening incident that can kill you, and you'll lose total control of the car just because of that. And I've had that experience. It's actually so scary, it makes you sick to think that that's a problem. So we're at the back of the car now, and obviously brakes at the back. This has got discs at the back as well. What else are you looking for at the back here?
Well, you've got all your bushes.
Okay. to hold basically the back axle in place, and that's often quite worn.
Yes. Most people don't look for that because why?
Yeah.
They don't realize that the bushes is the stability of the car.
Absolutely.
The anti-roll bar bushes,
it's these small little bushes here.
Such a small little bush, and that must carry this whole car.
Yeah.
So they wear out quite easy.
Okay.
And yeah, once again, the back brakes, and people forget on the inside is the handbrake shoes,
which are sitting right inside here.
Oh.
And again, that doesn't get checked often enough, doesn't always get adjusted.
Yeah.
There's the anti-load valve here, the load valve for the front and rear, but basically the load valve. This has been tied up, so obviously someone's at some stage trying to maximize the effect of this, but this needs to be checked because often these seize up, you know, and people don't always bleed them properly.
But they forget there's a bleeding valve on it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what we're looking at the back here is, besides brakes, bearings, shock absorbers, bump stops, the fuel tank's another thing I'd want us just to take a sample out of and just check the quality of the fuel. Yeah. It's a nice opportunity to do that. We are going to take the diff out and we're going to rebuild the diff, but that would normally be taken out and checked.
Yes.
Just to see.
When you take out, you check the axle play, the splines play.
Yes.
That's
from
important.
The side shafts that go through.
And your sun and planetary gears.
Yeah.
How much play that's got. So yeah.
It's the one opportunity you get to actually take everything apart and check it. And sometimes, even if it's just to put a gasket back, it's giving you the confidence to know that what's gone back in, even if the diff doesn't need to be rebuilt, it's got a new seal in, got a new oil seal, the breather's clean, and we've got that put back together. Okay, I'm looking forward to pulling this apart. The handbrake cable's another thing. Often I know that they often seize up because the rubber boots break off. Just this little rubber boot here, and then of course the dirt gets in and it seizes it up.
Yeah, and most people don't know how to set this correctly. And you'll see there's a little...
Yeah, they've got a little... Someone has gone and taken the cable that's stretched and put a little, like a Y to stretch the cable and take up the extra play. So, you know, that's a compromise you're looking for, because basically what's happened there is someone hasn't gone and just put a new handbrake cable in, reset it all. They've compromised, and the cable often gets stretched because people don't adjust it properly. So we'll sort that out, and it will have a new cable because we want to take that out. Yeah. So here we're going to look at the engine, the heart of the car basically. We've looked underneath and we've got a good idea. Now we actually want to look at the top. Let's look in here and actually see what are we looking for when we lift the bonnet of a car to try and identify problems or things that have gone wrong or potential weaknesses.
Yeah, what I usually do is I start looking in the engine compartment and see what was added on.
Right.
If they put a CAT scan on, why did they put it on? Is the engine breathing?
So is it hiding a problem basically?
Yes.
Okay.
Or did the guy put it on preventative? Okay. Or to keep carbon out of the manifolds?
Yeah.
So those are things we'll start looking at. Right away I can see there's extra relay fitted, and I don't see spotlight, so why is he there?
Yeah. Okay.
So we must just see why it's there and what the purpose is of that. What I also see is if the injectors are rusted. I know it has been done previously, because the chemicals takes off the coating of the metal. So that usually starts rusting.
It's a telltale indicator.
Yeah, so previously in its life, the injectors has been done.
Right.
So that's also a good sign. So the guy did look after his car.
Yeah.
He didn't just drive 400,000 with one
same injectors. Yes. And we do cover that. We talk about the essence of how important it is to manage and look after the fuel system.
But otherwise, if I look, there's just one wiring. So I think one can see now that wire was fitted to the relay and it's going to the starter. So already there may be an ignition problem, voltage drop, and they fitted the...
And you get that with the older cars. The ignition doesn't quite start and the start is not kicking in, and you bypass it with a relay. Any auxiliary wiring that people have added to the car is always for me a concern if it hasn't been done properly. So I prefer to take all that out and start again. So you've got the factory wiring loom, and then go through and check the different plugs and make sure, you know, wiring around an engine with oil and lubricants that come onto it, the tape comes off.
Yeah.
And it actually just takes a bit of time and care to go and check the wiring, re-tape it up, check the plugs, spray a bit of electrosolve in. Going forward here now, there's a lot of auxiliaries on the engine that we're going to pull off and look at. What are the things you find that need to be really looked at closely?
Well, these things got a gear oil pump.
Yeah.
And people don't really look in depth at that.
Okay.
And it's aluminium on steel, so you'll definitely find wear there.
Sure.
So on this kilometers, I won't compromise, just put a new oil pump in.
Okay.
Water pump, that's a given.
Yes.
You must do that. But also see what may have been modified or
worn out. I mean, you know, this not long ago we changed the brushes on the alternator.
Yeah.
And we know we're going to replace the alternator, but the brushes is worn out. Now at 450,000 kilometers, not bad. We don't know the history of the alternator, but actually it's another very, very important part of the engine is the alternator.
Okay.
So again, as you said, you know, the auxiliaries like the water pump, timing belts, oil pump when you're going to rebuild the engine. Now we're taking this engine out and we're going to strip it down to rebuild it because we know that it is worn. And we know that the symptoms, and we also want to do it to show people what you find on a worn engine of this mileage. Anything else that you would look for to tell you some more of the story?
If there's a water pressure leak or a compression in the water, you can check it on the bottle. If there's compression in the water, your pipes will get swollen up. Okay. It will bypass at your cap. It will push through the little pipe. It will make nice bubbles in the auxiliary tank.
Yeah.
And that was, well, over the years, well, my dad's time, the first health of a blown head gasket, or even a cracked cylinder head. So those are little things you can check for.
And sometimes I've had it where symptoms show up under pressure, under heat. I know this vehicle, when I drove it, let's say 140 kilometers an hour, then I had problems. It used to push the water out. So I'm suspecting there's either a cylinder head gasket problem or there's a crack in the cylinder head. Yeah. And knowing one of the weak points of this vehicle is a cylinder head, they were prone to cracking. Yeah. And that's not a bad thing if you understand the weak points, because we're going to put a new cylinder head on. Yeah. We're not even going to risk that. But understanding those weak points, I think on this particular vehicle, that was one, and the steering rack was another. But more than that, not many more that you knew of?
No, not really. You know, this, like I said previously, this is quite a sturdy little car, and this particular model I think has served people very well, and that's one of the reasons we are highlighting a model like this, is because it is a very good starter vehicle if you wanted to get into overlanding or 4x4ing or going away for weekends. I do believe it's a good value for money vehicle, and you pick them up for a good price, and I know you work on a lot of them. They're the cheapest on the market.
Yeah, one of the cheapest four-wheel drive second-hand on the market for very, very good value. Yeah. And I know the parts are very attainable. And price-wise on parts?
They're not bad.
Reasonably priced?
Yeah, because this was based on the Hilux build. Okay. So, and the Hilux prices are cheaper than actually the Land Cruiser.
Right.
So you actually come in between the two.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's like a big puzzle, and I think the plan is, as you strip each component out, you want to look more carefully at what you're taking out. Problems, bolts that are seized, pipes that you maybe didn't see properly the first time around. So that's why we say the inspection of any vehicle to look whether you're buying it or whether you're fixing it is critical. Yeah. Okay, great. I hope you can see the value in doing a critical check like this. There will come a point where you may need to walk away from the vehicle and think with your head and not your heart. It's really important that you make sure the vehicle you buy is a good, solid purchase, and you do that by making sure you check it thoroughly. So in the next episode, we're going to take the vehicle to Cape Transmissions. They're a specialist gearbox and transmission rebuilder, and they're going to test drive the vehicle. The importance of doing that is to pick up any problems while they're driving it, to alert us to repairs we may have to make. And it's important in your own vehicle when you drive and you listen for things that you come across. There might be a noise that you pick up. If you can be aware of those sort of problems, you can fix it long before it costs you a big big amount of money or lets you down on expedition. Thank you for your support. Remember to check out our website for more information.